Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we come and talk about an anime that we've recently watched in a book club format. We discuss characters and themes and lots of spoilers, but we're not there yet. And then we turn our discussion over to our listeners. They can send us back comments and tell us what they agree with, what they disagree with, what their opinions are, because everyone's opinions matters in this format. We're all part of the Baka Club, and that's how we present this. We are discussing Mob Psycho 103. That is a bit of a mouthful. It is the technically third season of Mob Psycho 100. We have done the first two, and this is the end of the story, so we had to come back one more time. And to do that, I need the help of my co-host. First off, we have the Reagan to my mob. It's Jeremy.
Hi. Elfin Lied. Or is it Lied or Led? Lied, I think.
Because of the psychic powers, I could see the connection. A little more gory.
Yep. Yeah, I was trying to think of like what good psychic anime have I seen that I would recommend. Yeah, I remember that one being really good.
Okay. We also have Jason.
Wow. I think that's the most insulting thing. Like
So
you insult me nearly every week.
I went back to
this time.
I went back to the 5th episode of Baka where we did Mob Psycho the very first time to get the names from it, and you didn't show that night, so I had nothing for you, and so you don't get a proper introduction. Also, no one go back and watch that, because if you think we're cringe now, my God, it was bad.
And I'll also point out real quickly, yes, we are doing a third show on an anime. Our rules, they have exceptions.
Yes.
Anyways.
I see this as its own anime. It's not.
We justify it however we have to.
I've been really thinking about lately and wanting to go back. You reminded me of it. I had there's something else picked out, but Princess Mononoke, I need to go watch that again.
That's a good one.
It's one of my all-time favorite anime movies.
It is.
I remember it made a huge impression on me. I was a teenager when I saw it, if I remember correctly. And yeah.
I watched it for like the third time probably a couple of years ago, and I appreciated it so much more than I did when I was a kid.
Mm.
It is in my top Miyazaki films, but I'm a big fan of Castle in the Sky. It is not his
good.
best, but for me, like,
it's
it
super
clicks. Good. Yeah.
So, fun factoid before we move on. Castle in the Sky is one of the anime we watched in my Japanese class in high school
cool.
for culture building.
Oh, man.
Come to find out, my teacher was just a big,
Ghibli fan.
But what's really funny is he was 6'5", and he visited Japan probably twice every year. And he's got all these pictures of him like walking down the street, and it's like the crowd's like here and he's here.
Yeah.
That's good.
It explains like how when they always draw the foreigners, they're like these massive hulking monsters in anime.
And my name is Troy. My anime would be One Punch Man. That's easy, but I do love One Punch Man. Made by the same artist, the original artist, One. He draws One Punch Man. And then also made by Bone Studios, season 1, I think, right? Either way. I especially love the first season. I think the first season's perfect. And I like the second season. All right. With that said, let's talk about Mob Psycho 103. Jeremy, this was your pick. So what did you think without any spoilers?
Yeah, spoiler free. So it's definitely Mob Psycho, and I love it for that. But I think I must have like some kind of issue with multi-season anime coming to a close, because I just didn't find it as satisfying. All of the parts were there. I think if I'm going to be completely fair, it was executed very well. But there was something, at least to me, that felt a little bit artificial, because in order to tie all the knots and, make sure that everything has a little bow on it and the story is finished, you maybe have to work your story a little bit. There might be a bit of artificiality that seeps through, that we have to hit A, B, C, D, E in order to get it all done. And as a viewer, I kind of noticed that, and I never noticed anything like that in the storytelling of seasons 1 and 2. So I have to say, for that reason, it's not as good as the other 2 seasons to me, but I do think technically it was probably executed great. Just, this is a pet peeve of mine.
Fair enough. Jason, what'd you think?
I had a blast. It's so funny because every time I start Mob Psycho, some of the artistic choices with how they draw the characters are a little off-putting to me. And I think it's not so much that it's bad, it's that it's so different from everything else. Like, one of the characters looks like Steve from Minecraft.
Yes.
and it's interesting how quickly that falls away from me every time I watch one of these seasons. The storytelling is just
the vegetable girls. The vegetable
right.
girls was the first thing that crossed my mind when you said that.
Yeah, the storytelling is so great. I loved the slow burn character building that we got through both seasons. So if you watch the season in context, it's even better. And I disagree with Jeremy. I think wrapping it up felt really great. So it's this is like, for like 2022, 2023, this is in the top 5 to watch.
So I loved it. I thought this was great, but to Jeremy's point, where I see where he's coming from is that about through the second arc, I'm like, oh, this isn't like an epilogue. We've seen the story. This isn't really more story. It is tying things up. And in that context, if it was completely on its own, it's probably not peak anime. But the fact that it has 2 seasons of character building and is now landing that, and I explained it to these guys in the pre-show. I see it as like season 1 and 2 are like the triple Lux flip. This is just the feet landing on the mat and staying together, knees only bent a little bit, and landing that perfect landing. And I do think it's a perfect landing in my opinion, but it definitely needed those 2 seasons behind it to get it there. I think that it earned it. I don't see any problem with that. But it is fair if I compared like this to just like 1 season of Chainsaw Man probably told better story throughout its 1 season than this did. But this was on the shoulders of giants, and deservedly so. So I think it's great. I don't really have any issues with it. So we'll, except for maybe one part. Well, yeah, we'll get to it. All right, I've been more excited to talk about this than almost the rest of the anime. Guys, thoughts on the opening and the closing? Bob Squire.
They're okay.
They're fine.
No, I'm kidding. They were great. I love like all of the I think there were 2 EDs, and then or was there?
I think it's just the one.
Just the one. Okay. But then both. But the music is fantastic. The visuals they were very reminiscent of season 1, not the season 2 like weird spinny thing, which I thought that was great too. But yeah, they really nailed it with both of them.
They didn't really make an impression on me.
Did you watch it over and over until it beat itself into your brain?
No, I didn't. I watched it a couple times and then moved on.
At least you gave it a couple. That's fair.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched it, I was like, not as good as 99 or 99.9. Third or fourth time I watched it, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get it. Now, so I think honestly, in the long term, the originals are still better. But right now, this is the new hotness, and I have been listening to it over and over again, and I really do love it. I also like they did some cool tricks in the opening. First, the song's called One, which is also the name of the artist who made Mob Psycho. So that's really cool. And then at the end, it says Bones, the studio, with the B and the S drop off, and it turns into One. And then it says One and Only One, which is the motto of the song. And then the ending is like this smudged marker drawings of Mob going throughout his morning, while the ending of season 1 was the same art style, but Regan getting up through his morning. And I love the parallels. I just love the respect they have for what they've done. That this really is a full circle project. The whole point is just to tie everything together, and yeah, that shows just the OP and ED.
So, do you guys actually remember that the first season's ED was Regan getting up in the morning, or did you like go back and remind yourself?
I have been listening to the OP on YouTube. A lot. And honestly, I've just been typing in like Mob Choir, play all of them. And so it played all the openings, and then it started playing all the endings. And I looked down, and I'm like, oh, that's the same exact art style. No, I did not remember 6 years ago what the art style
I was like,
never.
I don't remember this stuff. Like, you guys are describing the songs and everything. I'm like, I got no clue.
I do go back and watch the Mob Psycho openings occasionally on YouTube. They are that good. They are some of the best in the business. 99.9 are great songs.
Yeah.
So Mob Choir, one of my favorite bands, apparently.
One of the ones that hit for me that I wasn't a big fan of the anime was Princess Principal's OP. I really like that one, sticks with me for some reason. I'll go back and watch that every once in a while.
Oh, really? I don't
Yeah.
remember that one. Now I want to see
Yes.
it. Okay, I'll have to check that out later. I bet I loved it too. I bet I was like, this is fire and I'll never forget.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Before we go to spoilers, though, our next anime. It's finally here, guys. I waited so long. This anime was on fire in Japan. It's visually impressive. It's got this great time loop story. It's called Summertime Rendering, which is technically a 2022 older anime almost by this point, but Disney bought the rights and they've been holding it. Well, they finally released it. It's on Hulu in America, Disney Plus in other regions. It's here. Summertime Rendering. It's going to be 2 podcast episodes to do. We're doing episodes 1 through 12 for the first one. This is about a young man who has to return to a sleepy little fishing village because of the death of a friend. And he ends up in a time loop, bizarre monster battles, crazy story. Every time I've seen a clip from it, I'm like, that's from that anime? What is this about?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I've been waiting for this for so long.
Me too.
Summertime Rendering. Here we go. Finally.
Woo! Sweet.
All right. Let's drop our spoiler warning now. If you have not seen Mob Psycho 103, spoilers coming, but also probably spoilers for part 1 and part 2. So if I would guess you would know right now if you want to hear these spoilers or not. Like
Mob dies. No.
That's how it ends.
I mean, that's how everything ends, right? Eventually.
Fair. Eventually.
Then he's just
For all of
floating
us.
there with Dimple.
Now we've gotten dark. Okay. Spoiler warning has been dropped. We're moving to the story. All right. Catch up with Mob and beginning of this story. Do we need to explain who Mob is and all that stuff again? Should we assume people know?
Super psychic boy with no emotions.
Suppresses his emotions because he once hurt his brother in a psychic outburst. He is probably the most powerful psychic on the entire planet because of these repressed emotions. And he's battled evil psychic organizations and basically redeemed them all.
and now there's the giant broccoli from last season is still here and a major focal point for this season.
Which was a result of the villain having so much psychic energy he was going to destroy the city. Mob absorbed it and turned it into a piece of giant broccoli.
Because he had seeds in his pocket.
That's right. He had the seeds in his pocket. There's going to be a lot of, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
There's a few characters that walk by. I'm like, You were a bad guy, I want to say.
Yeah, that happened to me so many times. I was like, who are you? Who are you?
Yeah, I had actually meant to say that in the non-spoiler section that I do kind of wish they had been closer together. I just know that's not literally possible.
Mm.
They need time to make it. But I kind of wish I could just sit down and watch Mob Psycho beginning to end now. I really envious the people who start now back at season 1 and get to watch all of it
Yeah.
together. That I think will be a better experience than having it broken out every couple years.
Mm-hmm.
So Mob is he's in school and he has to fill out his career path summary
Because he's coming up on 4th year, right?
He's a second year in middle school and he's coming up on his 3rd year, and they're like, okay, it's time to start thinking about what you want to do.
I thought he was 3rd year, coming up on his 4th year. But okay, my bad.
I think they only do 3 years, and Tomei is a 3rd year, about to go to high school. She's 1 year older than Mob. Because I think at the very end we are in his 3rd year. We've passed into his 3rd year.
Because he does stick around as vice president. So
right.
Yeah,
and a lot of those
that's
members,
where I missed it. Okay.
some of those characters are no longer there because they have gone on to high school. All right, super spoilers.
Yeah.
So we have talked multiple times about Mob. I have no idea what we've said in the past, but what do you guys think about Mob now, and what happens to him in this story?
Okay, super major spoiler. I am just enthralled with how they went with this story with Mob, because I was expecting, just like every other shonen or other anime, that, you had big bad guy, you beat big bad guy, new big bad guy comes that's bigger than big bad guy, beat that bad. Then, the guy that hired this guy who happens to be bigger than big bad guy, that didn't happen. We didn't get a bad guy, which I loved, because bad guy was, we thought one person, but really he wasn't. He was just calling for attention. And then other bad guy happened to be Mob. Like, the biggest bad guy was an internal battle that ended up spilling out into real world. But I loved this storyline because of that. This idea that then Reagan helped. Okay, I'm going to save that till we get there, because I really want to talk about that, because I really love it. But anyway, because of the slow character arc burn for Mob, I really liked this character. He was himself all the way until episode 9, and then he has this existential crisis, and it's all triggered by this idea of, what are you going to do in the future? And he has no idea. And it's fantastic. Love it.
Yeah. Mob's always been really interesting to me because he's got this sort of repression of all of his emotions and just not engaging with society and with the people around him any more than he absolutely has to, for the most part. But he's still curious. He's still always been curious and wanting to, just not sure how to do it safely. And in the first 2 seasons, what I do remember, and honestly, this was one thing in the OP that stuck with me every time that the show started, because usually, you can't get it right on. I would still get the shot of like Regan and Mob standing there, and like Regan's crouched down and he's got a hand on Mob's shoulder or whatever. And then he stands up and Mob is just aging and going through all the different outfits that we've seen him in and everything. And that is so cool. But to me, that is kind of the culmination of what we're seeing here. Is his personality has he's become less gullible. He's still gullible, but he's become less gullible. He's become less dependent on Regan. He's still dependent, but less dependent. That's really cool. We're getting to see that Mob is growing into an adult. And
especially his Chad moment.
Oh my God, yes, Mob Chad, Giga Chad. Oh man,
Giga
that was
Mob.
awesome. Yes. And so seeing what his concerns are, because like his concerns have always been, in one way or another, that girl from his class. He's always had a crush on her in every season. But being older now, this is becoming something more serious. Like now he's like, I really got to ask her out, that kind of thing, right? He's at that stage. So just watching him grow into more of an adult is absolutely fascinating. And I totally agree with Jason. Like, the idea that Mob is the villain because his suppressed powers are such a danger and such a problem. And in order to really bring his story to a close, you have to deal with that. And that is really cool. What they did with him is really cool. So yeah, I think Mob's a great character. He's been really fun to go on the ride with and very believable. So yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite characters in anime.
The story writer one has such a interesting approach compared to most anime because, like you said, it's shonen power. I'm Deku. I want to be the best. I'm gonna excel. I need to excel. And then he does One Punch Man, and he's like, I did excel, and now I'm completely dissatisfied, and it brought me no joy at all. And then you have Mob, who's like, I could excel, but that's not where I want to excel. I want to be a normal person and excel at other stuff that I put hard work into, not something I just got.
Did you catch that he had One Punch Man on his phone?
Yes, I did see that. I even wrote it down somewhere in my notes.
I didn't see that.
I was like, that's so meta.
His cell phone has One Punch Man on it. Drawn though in the Mob Psycho style, which is funny. Right. I just, to kind of piggyback on what Jeremy said too, I love seeing all the improvements. Nowhere in this entire season does Mob resolve any problems with violence.
Yeah,
him personally, he obviously he's the kind of the big bad of the ending, so he can't beat himself with violence. But that doesn't happen. And then his big confrontation with the villain of the first arc, he literally pushes his powers away and says, "Okay, they were in the way. Now we can talk, and I just want to talk this through." And that's not something Mob was capable of before. He couldn't come to those emotional resolutions. He needed that anger or that emotion to boil to 100%, release his power. He'd bash whatever he needed to bash, and then he could maybe confront it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's little things too. There's a quick shot in episode 9 where he's playing soccer and the ball gets kicked to him and he fields it and he passes it along and then keeps running up the field. In season 1, he tripped over that ball and he fell flat on his face. They did a matching shot. When he runs with the body, cool. When he runs with the Body Improvement Club, he's not passing out anymore. They don't carry him anymore. In fact, he becomes the vice president. They went out of their way to show that he has matured, just like you said, and I absolutely love that for him, for what they set him up to be, and then bringing that to a resolution and having him mature into that. And he still has a way to go too, which is part of the story. Like we all do, and that's okay. And that's such a good message. So big fan of Mob.
I was actually really surprised at how much time has elapsed because I didn't realize when I saw that at the end of the OP where he's just this little tiny kid. I was like, wait a minute, is that how little he was when we first saw him?
No, but that is how little he was when he met Regan because he had his psychic powers. He was freaking out about him, and he went to this psychic's office, Regan, and was like, "Hey, what do I do with him?" And Regan's like, "Whatever you want. Your powers aren't you. You're you. You're part of society. Don't worry about your powers. You're not special."
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm going to start using you for help.
Yes, as Regan is wont to do.
The duality of Regan.
So it was a flashback in season 1 then. Okay.
Yes. So we have seen Mob That Small, but that is not where Mob started. I think it's maybe been 1 year. No, because season 2 has Regan's birthday.
Been a few years, few years.
Yeah. At least 2, maybe more.
Okay.
All right. So he's freaking out about this form. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And he starts going around asking for advice. And the first person he asks is his master, his boss, Regan, who says, "What do you mean your future? This is your future. This job." And so we need to talk about Regan, who really is almost a dual primary protagonist of this series. He gets his own spin-off manga, which I've been reading. It's fantastic. Your guys' thoughts on my favorite character, Regan.
I forgot we did a Baka breakdown on Regan in the bar.
That's right, we did.
Season 2, and he outshines himself. And one thing I wanted to point out, he says he has no psychic powers whatsoever, but he developed a little bit of sensitivity because he can see Dimple.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember him developing that in season 2. But anyways, his arc is not as good as Mob's, but it's just fantastic. I I love this idea that when he sees dollar signs, he loses his ability to think rationally, and he will con whoever he needs to get to it. But once danger presents itself, he doesn't just go into self-protection mode. He instantly is concerned about the people around him as well, especially Mob. And we see that not only in the basement with the sword guy, we see that on the mountaintop, and then we see that at the whirlwind or the tornado. And him just kind of laying out his honesty there at the end was just so impactful. I really like Mob Psycho would be great even without him, but it's so much better with him.
So Regan always reminds me of Psych. The protagonist of Psych, where he basically is pretending to be a psychic, but he's not. Yeah. For anybody who hasn't seen that, it's very, very similar. He helps detectives.
That's right, because the telepath kid, he goes, oh, he has no ability. He's just really good at reading people.
Yep.
Also, you go see the show Psych. I know this is an anime podcast, but it's one of my favorite shows. That show is amazing.
It's very good. Yeah. And so for that reason, you know, I definitely find that type of character to be very funny, very engaging, interesting, especially because he also plays it very comedically. And we're not talking about Psych anymore. We're talking about Regan. Regan's role and his execution of things, he has very good comedy timing. You know, like the way that he couldn't give a care in the world about the 100 yokai army, you know. Whatever, like, this guy's a cosplayer, the cops will arrest him, it's all fine. Wait, you have 1,000,000 yen? Okay, let's go get these yokai, they're gonna cause problems, we don't want to let this cycle of sadness continue. You know, he's like, he's got all the catchphrases and fully engaged. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat everything Jason said, but like, yeah, same things. He's a great character. It was cool to see that he finally did confront. Like, I don't know if I'm remembering incorrectly or not. I have vague memories of him wanting to say something to Mob previously, but not doing it. Maybe that's just me thinking he was doing that. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, you have to point out the specific scene.
I don't remember exactly, but the fact that he actually does, that he comes out with it and tells Mob the truth about him not having any psychic powers, and that's actually very, very important because of Mob's gullibility. Like, that is a bigger issue than it might seem, you know, at face value to just reveal this. So, yeah, he's a good character. And
not just that, I lied to you. I've been using you.
Yeah.
I can't believe he added that in. I was like, man, that's so big. He took responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he went all in.
Yeah.
Regan, I was telling these guys, is probably one of my top 5 anime characters of all time at this point. It helps also that I'm reading the manga, but the thing that really strikes me, that always stays with me, is the end of season 1, when Mob's about to face the final boss of that season. And Regan comes up to him and like gives him a slaps on the cheeks and is like, "You're a kid. This shouldn't come onto your shoulders. You shouldn't have to do this." And then the powers go to Regan, right? And he's able to smash these. He thinks he's smashing posers away, but he actually has psychic powers now. But just that embrace of, I'm adult. I'll take care of you. You don't have to face the world's problems as a child. In anime, that's so unique. Like, in anime, we put problems on the children. That there wouldn't be anime if we didn't make the children get in the robot.
Yeah.
It's so unique, and that's always stuck with me. And so I just love every moment he has of how much he cares about Mob, but he is a user and a liar, and he knows it. But I have one big question I need to ask you about Regan. Did he quit smoking? I don't remember him smoking once this season. And he definitely smoked in the first season.
Yeah, I didn't see any cigarettes.
I didn't either.
Okay, so yeah, I'd like to think he did that for Mob. Just in my head canon, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Regan. So yeah, you asked Regan. Regan's like, yeah, this is your future, and so Mob. Oh yeah, we meet Regan's new apprentice, Sarazawa, who I think we all had to Google. It was hard to remember who this was. He was the guy with the umbrella who was a shut-in and had been saved by the main villain from last season 2 and had been used by him. And Mob's like, "I'll be your friend," and so he switched sides. And now he's got a haircut and a suit and tie. He gets his own little desk.
That is unfair too, because like
they changed his appearance.
They completely changed his appearance. Most of the time that we knew this character, he looked completely different, and only in the very last scenes of season 2 did they change his appearance. So like, how would we possibly recognize him anyways? But also, according to the character guidebook, Regan stops smoking completely as soon as Mob starts coming to the office. So your headcanon's right.
Best character ever. There are some great look. I don't want to spoil the manga because we're not here to spoil the manga. There are some great jokes and some great moments for Regan. They let him shine in it, and it's just so good. I recommend reading it for anyone who's like really enjoying this and just wants a 3 months later. Here's what the characters are doing, and it's not really any emotional growth for anybody, but just to get it's more of an exploration of the character of Regan, and it's just really good.
Would you call it slice of life, or is there like something going on?
No, there's something going on.
Okay.
It's all told from Tomei's point of view. You know, she said she started working there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's only kind of true. She's just showing up. He's like, I didn't invite you. Not officially. And she just shows up, and so she's like, I want to get psychic, and she's like, I'll be psychic like you. He's like, yeah, like me. And they have some psychic adventures, and but it was just like I said, it was really good. It was a gift from my daughter for Christmas, and I've been waiting to read it, and this was a good time. All right, Sarazawa.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. My last thing, just for some reason, even near the end, he still isn't giving up his con ways because like he's coming up the stairs and Dimple's like, there wasn't even anyone there, like anything there. He's like, yeah, I know, but I threw some salt.
Oh no, yeah, he's still a habitual liar. Like he didn't grow. He just was honest for once.
Right, it took responsibility. Yeah. Right. But he was like, he charged him anyways.
So Sarazawa doesn't really get any growth, other than like he starts going to night school throughout the story and stuff. He's kind of similar to Mob in that he's like, I want to be more than just this psychic superhero. So your guys' thoughts on Sarazawa?
He's a pretty bland character, but he did add to the scenes that he was in. I did like he seems to be willingly allowing himself to be manipulated by Regan. He doesn't, from his actions and the way he kind of portrays himself, either he's super, super dumb or he's just like, this is a good middle stop for me while I study in school. And, Regan does have some good advice. So I guess I'll stick around.
That's what it's because he's a shut-in and Regan is a master of living or good advice. So he's just trying to learn how to be a functional adult, and that's and in trade he's helping Regan, even though it does seem he believes Regan is an actual powerful psychic and is it is completely fooled by that. But yeah, he's not there to become a better psychic. He doesn't care about that anymore. He's just there to learn life skills.
I mean, to watch how impressed he was with rice glue.
Oh my gosh, yes. So, I guess if you think about it in terms of where he came from and the fact that he was not just a shut-in, but like sort of in I almost want to call it like a codependent relationship with the Master of Claw. Right? Because the guy was just basically keeping him to suck his power from him or something. Or maybe I remember he was doing that to his son. At least he was absorbing his son's power and gathering it.
That was his big skill, was absorbing power too.
Yeah, and so he had this guy, and I do remember that there was something about Serizawa believing that, his relationship with the leader of Claw was one of friendship and a true mentor to a student and everything. And then finding out that that was not what was really happening was a huge, painful revelation to him. So in this situation of Regan, he's essentially learned from Mob that, Regan's a good guy. I've got a good relationship with him. He's trustworthy. So I think
And
he's
he pays
going
me
into it.
regularly.
Yeah, and he pays me. Yeah, and so I think he's going into it with that expectation and hopefulness. But every now and then he sees things that Regan's doing that expose that maybe Regan's not 100% honest, but at the same time he seems kind of harmless. It seems like he's actually still more interested in helping you than he is in, doing anything harmful to you to help himself. So yeah, I kind of wonder how much of it is him coming from that situation where he's got a sort of mental training to have codependent relationships, but at the same time wanting to get out of that sort of relationship. So he's spotting some of the symptoms and then trying to decide. I don't know, maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I saw some potential complexity in his interactions and reactions to what he saw from Regan. But beyond that, yeah, in pretty much every other way, he was kind of just there, like a wallflower almost. Not really important to any story that was taking place.
He definitely makes Regan less dependent on Mob, though, which is good for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this office gets a client who brings in this totem he thinks is cursed, and he's like, "I paid all this money for it," and Regan looks on the bottom as it's cheap sticker on it. Well, one thing Regan is good at is recognizing cons, which is definitely something he does help his clients with.
One thing I have to keep remembering is like they'll throw around numbers like 1,000,000 yen, and I have to keep remembering, oh, that's right, that's like $10,000. Like it's still a lot of money, but like it's always inflated by 2 zeros.
Right.
Yep.
But the totem ends up actually being cursed, and then he's like, "Oh yes, I knew that. I was testing Serizawa, who didn't mention it, so he fails, and he has to do the exorcism now." But they break the arm during the exorcism, and this is when he uses rice to glue it back together.
And what did he say? He paid like 18,000 yen for it, but on the bottom he lifts it up and it's only got 500 yen on the bottom.
Yeah. Got pissed off.
Then Mob, he talks to his parents about the career path survey. They're not very much help. He talks to Dimple about it, and now we need to talk about Dimple, the evil spirit who lives in Mob's room, waiting to use him for his glorious plans of becoming a god. At least that was why he originally started staying there. He was an antagonist for one of the arcs in this first season. He's been helpful at times throughout season 2, and now he still is kind of questionable. Your guys' thoughts on Dimple this season?
What a fantastic character. He was not this great the other 2 seasons. Jeremy, I think you had some really insightful thoughts. Why don't you go first?
Sure. I absolutely love Dimple. I cracked up when he realized that he had become distracted and he had grown fond of and accustomed to Mob and forgotten what his true motivations and goals were. And he realized this because Mob's like, "What should I do? I need to figure out what my career path is." And so Dimple's like, "What was my career? Oh, crap." I was leading a cult. I was going to be a god with all that worshiper power.
And then he makes a deal with Bobbity, becomes Majin Dimple.
Basically, Bobbity the giant broccoli monster. Yeah. And so just seeing that and seeing how this, once again, we have another character who has had an excellent arc over the previous 2 seasons. And in order to tie things up here, we have to see a resolution of that arc, and they do it really, really well. The fact that he posits his idea to Mob almost immediately. He's like, "Okay, I do have something I really want to do. Let's go do this. You can be a god with me. This is going to be great. This is what I always wanted." And that gets shot down. And so seeing him try to essentially achieve his goals and kind of get lost in those goals and start causing a lot of problems was it felt like really good writing. Like things were playing out in a way that was believable for this character. Now the interaction between him and Mob that takes place to resolve this, I thought was actually, I was not 100% on board until it actually, like, I don't know, I guess got halfway through, and then it was good. Then it felt right. I know it's kind of like there's a whole lot of ambiguity here because I think those scenes are really good. I kind of want to make sure that we hit them in the order that they happen, so I don't want to talk about them too much. But yeah, I thought Dimple was great, and it's sad when Dimple dies. It's very sad when Dimple dies, but he comes back, so it's all good.
One of my favorite things about this storyline, it builds up throughout. So Dimple kind of disappears for a couple episodes, and actually, Mob's brother even mentions like, "Hey, I haven't seen him in a while." It's building up as if Dimple's going to be the main antagonist of this story, and to come to find out that it was more of a cry for attention and for companionship. Also, like, so that was really good, and it actually had great resolution. But I also love the philosophical mind exercise, or like thought exercises that happen here. And the main one that I really liked was, I'm not hurting anyone. Someone else would have taken this spot anyways. Why doesn't it be someone ultra realistic like me? Because I've always wanted this anyways. And, these people are happy and satisfied. Like, what's the harm? Like, these are really great debate that they have during this whole arc. And and of course, Dimple going, "Oh, I just wanted a friend." It felt really good. Like, really great payoff.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is that Jeremy's like, "We'll save this for later." Jason's like, "No!"
No! I'm just gonna tell you.
Well, I didn't get into these specifics.
A little bit, but there's still enough meat on the bone. We're good.
Yeah.
I like Dimple. I guess he didn't really ever make an impression. He wasn't one of my favorite characters in the first couple of seasons, but I do think they did a lot of great stuff with him here. And most of what I want to talk about is in the actual argument too, so I'm going to save mine. Because Dimple himself, he's fine. He's good. He's good stuff. But it's what they do with him. It's the plot points that really drive some great writing in this series. But Dimple's cool.
For an evil cult leader that's
evil
dead
cult leader.
and haunting everybody. Yeah.
And then Regan has a job. He takes Mob on with Sarazawa, where they basically a hoarder who's just disgusting and gross and lives in this disgusting, filthy house with cockroaches, which we have learned bad in anime. Big deal when cockroaches show up. That is not favorite thing in Japan.
And all of them are like, "You are not possessed," because he starts blaming his like hair loss and like his losing his girlfriend.
He brushes his teeth twice a day. They still look like this no matter what he does.
So he must be possessed.
Yeah, he must be possessed.
And they're just like, "No, you're just gross."
I gotta touch on
I love that they find a picture of him from when he was younger and he's already bald. They're like, "You're not possessed. You never had hair."
We gotta touch on the cockroach thing.
Okay.
Because that had come up when one of the anime we watched. I blurred it out, right? We were like, "Why would it blur it out?" And then we found out, big thing. How did we missed it so much? I've been watching My Hero Academia. I've mentioned this multiple times. And there was a character who it was a big deal that he picked up a cockroach in school, and the girls were like, "Oh no, he picked up a cockroach." It's everywhere in anime. We are idiots. We deserve it. It is a big deal. It's so many anime.
I guess in our defense, nobody likes cockroaches.
Right?
Everybody thinks cockroaches are disgusting. And so if it's as simple as like, "Ew, it's a cockroach," that wouldn't really stand out to me. But Yeah, I don't know if they'd like blurred it or something.
Yeah,
Maybe that.
definitely. Now
I'm
that
surprised.
I know, whenever it's
Uh.
mentioned in an anime, I'm like, oh my goodness, it
One
totally
of their
was. It's totally
pet
there.
peeves. Yeah.
But like you said, bugs are gross, so it just seems
Yeah.
like an automatic thing to use as a reference. But
Yeah.
it's like this ultra thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Special.
And I love that Reagan is just like the worst freaked out. He's sweating
Oh,
profusely because he's so uncomfortable.
So this a spirit actually forms from the guy. He's not possessed, but his lethargy actually creates a spirit that attacks everyone in the neighborhood, making them lethargic. Regan, who's out getting cleaning supplies and cockroach spray, he gets attacked, but he does his water mist attack, which is just
Oh my god, he's spraying hydrogen peroxide.
I love that all of his mundane like
It
moves
worked.
are all
Are-
labeled.
his special attack moves.
Yeah. Hydrogen peroxide mist.
He comes back and he sees the spirit and he tells Sarazawa and Mob to kill it. They do, and it automatically cleans the house too. But what's important about this episode is that both Sarazawa and Mob are seeing this as like possible future because of how stuck they are in their lives. Sarazawa's not doing anything; he's just working at the Regan place and getting by. Mob doesn't know what he wants for his future, and so like they get honestly depressed because of this guy. And it drives them to go into action. Sarazawa signs up for night school, and Bob decides to fill out his form, which he only lists, I just want to keep going on to high school, which is going to be hard for him because his grades are bad. But then he goes to Regan and he tells him, I don't want to keep working here forever. And Regan's like, yeah, I was just kidding. Of course. You got to live your life, man. Do what you want. And with no upset about this. And I remember back in season 1, Regan had been like, don't hang out with your friends, hang out with me. And like been a little bit needy of him. And that had actually driven a wedge between them. Remember they broke up for like a little bit?
Yeah.
Something happened like that. So it was really good to see that growth for both characters of like, we're always going to be friends, but there's a date on this business arrangement and both being okay with that.
I wonder how much of that has to do with him being able to work with Sarazawa too. Like you mentioned before, that's taken some of the necessity off of Mob.
Yeah. Yes.
It's there somewhere.
It's
It's part of it.
I'd like to think also just character growth, but you're right.
Yeah.
It probably does help to have functionality taken care of for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
And then we see Dimple go to the divine tree, which is a giant piece of broccoli.
So they bring back the Psycho Helmet cult, which I don't think had much exposure in season 2. Is that right?
There was an arc about it in season 2. So there's this character I skipped over. It's the blondish girl who's the reporter, and she had taken Mob to the LOL cult and know that he's Psycho Helmet, or highly suspects he's Psycho Helmet, and wants him to through season 2 wanted him to take his spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like Dimple got involved with that too at some point. But anyway, Psycho Helmet's
Well,
still a thing.
I thought that's where Dimple came from, was from season 1 leading the LOL
From the
cult.
LOL cult.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
laughing cult, which became the Psycho Helmet cult.
Psycho. Because it's
Yeah, and everyone's
Mob's image.
starting to worship the tree too, because something miraculous has happened, and people are just attributing miracles to it, and
For some reason, they've connected the Divine Tree with the Psycho Helmet cult.
right,
Yeah.
Because they believe that Psycho Helmet created the Divine Tree.
which is technically true.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do love the fact that they actually allowed the tree's existence to have a massive impact on the local culture. You don't always see that in anime. I thought that was really cool. I'm a little bit sad that the resolution to this got rid of the tree essentially, and then that effect on the culture was gone. I would have liked to have seen it stay, because it was interesting how the people and the culture evolved with this story, but it went back to what it was before, it seems like.
I would be so pissed if my town grew a giant broccoli tree, and so every candy and cookie in the city tasted like broccoli.
It's like broccoli.
Like, God, I'm moving. This is the worst miracle ever.
Like, what tourists would even show up?
Vegans.
Yes, it's true.
Um. Okay, the next episode is about the yokai hunter.
I like this guy a lot. This guy was funny.
Yeah, basically a demon hunter who wants to hunt down demons in the city, and he comes to Regan for help. And
No social skills.
he has no social skills. He's just like this total loser, and he's battled one demon once that he fought for 3 days.
Yes, and it was
mountaintop.
essentially like at the power level of Dimple.
Right. It was like basic demon, but now he's going after the 1,000 demon army, and he only gets Regan involved because he has a ton of money. So they go hunting the city. Now Mob, he doesn't care because the school festival's coming up and he's in charge of costume design. So like they're hunting demons.
But yeah, he's half engaged with this. Like
Right.
he's barely acknowledging that they're hunting demons because he keeps like thinking about the festival.
And Sarazawa's thinking about night school. Like no one's really paying attention. They end up in a building and they find the demon army and they easily
annihilate it,
kill it. Yeah, Mob and Sarazawa are insanely powerful. They have no problem. Regan's throwing salt like he does. The 4 demon generals appear. They get slain. The demon king appears. They don't even show him die. It's just off screen. No, this was done. He's so weak. But there's 2 things that happen. So his dead body's on the ground, and Regan tries to take a picture because he wants to update the website. Right, this will be good for the website.
Which is a really big tell to both like everyone around him. Oh, he's not psychic. Like he thinks he can take a picture of this thing.
So yeah, he's trying to take a picture, but of course the camera can't capture it. Mob uses the Demon King's form as the costume idea for the monster they're going to put in the haunted house at the school festival. And when Regan goes in, he takes a picture of it and uses that for the website. And I love that little bow tie on it. That was a great, perfect. But also it showed Mob like taking command, because at first he's like trying to get the group into the costume, and they're like, we'll just do like white sheets and ghosts. And he's like, I have ideas, but he can't communicate them. But he gets this idea. He's like, no, guys, we have to try. We have to do our best. It gets mad results, but he feels good that he tried his best.
You know, that is something that is pretty consistent in this season, and I really like it. The fact that just because Mob is trying to do something doesn't mean he's going to excel at it.
Right.
As a matter of fact, he's probably going to fail, and if he does succeed, it's just going to be a meh success. You never get that in anime.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's really cool.
Especially with the more slice of life story like this, right? It's always perfect. We did it. We nailed it. Everyone loved it. It was like, people were like, it was all right.
Yeah. Or even it reminds me of like the entrance exam at My Hero Academia, right? Where even if you just barely succeed, so much is at stake that barely succeeding is actually a massive success.
Right.
You know?
Yep. In the next episode, the girl he likes, Takane, gets snot on her face from a sneeze and is trying to hide it from her friend. So Mob ends up helping her, and he has to talk to her for the first time in like a long time. This is the girl he's had a crush on for multiple seasons. He hardly ever makes contact with her, so he talks with her, and he's like, yeah. And then he talks to Tomei, and he talks to the reporter girl, and another girl named Emmy comes by, and he's
Beginning of Giga Mob.
Yeah, the Emmy girl points out, like, you're popular with girls. A lot of girls are talking to you. He's like, I am talking to a lot of girls. People are looking at me. They're looking at him because he looks just like the Psycho Helmet posters.
Yes.
But he's like, I think I'm getting popular. And we get 100% meter. We haven't, I mean, it's been building, but it is 100% confidence or ego or whatever it is. He's got a big head, and he gets this.
Yep.
They call it Chad.
Yeah.
His chin gets this big dimple. His face becomes giant and manly. He looks like a JoJo character.
Yes.
And he tells his brother Ritsu, who I did not write down that we need to talk about. Ritsu, his brother, we should mention, who was insanely important to the story because this is the brother he hurt and is great at everything except for being psychic, but all he wants to be is psychic. But now they have a good connection. Guys, thoughts on Ritsu real quick?
He was almost an antagonist in the first season, and now he's not only come around to being supportive, but he's almost like more wise than Mob is, and he has this like complete 180 change of heart where he's like, I am here for my brother. I understand what you're going through, and I understand that you just need help. And let me be that help for you because we're brothers. Great supporting character. He wasn't majorly impactful through the beginning of the season, but like he plays a major role later.
Yeah. Ritsu was pretty cool.
I have one criticism of him. He let Mob go out in that shirt.
Not very brotherly. Or maybe very brotherly.
This isn't really just specifically about Ritsu, but one thing they do with this season is they take the established motivation from the past and they go to the layer underneath it. And like Ritsu is one of the ones that stands out of back in season 1. Yeah, I'm popular. Yeah, I'm smart and I'm good at everything, but I want to be psychic. You know, and that, like you said, almost turned him into a villain in the first season. And they just kind of left it as like, oh, I was just jealous of the one thing you were good at. And I need to be okay that I am on my own path with it, and I don't need to be as good as you. But then they come back to it in this season. They're like, I felt that if I had this, it was the only way I could connect with you because of how insanely powerful you were, and that it scared me, and that we no longer were connecting. So I thought if I could get insanely powerful too, I didn't have to be afraid, and you didn't have to feel like I needed to be afraid of you, and we could sit down and talk again. They do that with a bunch of characters in their final resolutions of like, yeah, here's the motivation that's established, but there was always this little foundation underneath it, and they needed to get to that to fully come to actualization and realization. Not to spoil Ritsu's, but I just love that they do that with characters, and Ritsu doesn't really do much else this season except for come to that moment. So that's not to bring it up.
One thing I appreciated though, because there's a scene where I'm like, oh man, are we going to get a DBZ? I'm related to you, therefore I have similar power level battle going on, and
100% Ritsu.
Right. Yeah. I was going, oh great, they share a bloodline, therefore they both have endless amounts of psychic energy. No, that doesn't happen. So.
I did like that little trick though, because I was wondering, wait a minute, why is there a meter? Like, whose meter is this? What's going on? Like, is it Mob's meter? You know, what's happening? Why is it going so fast now?
The reporter girl wants to talk about the cult again, and she starts actually to convince him. He's like, maybe I should become the leader of the cult. That because someone had pointed out it would help him with girls too. With Takane, maybe she'd notice him. So he's like, well, okay, maybe I'll do this. Then Dimple shows up, and he's like, yeah, we should take control of the cult together. And he's like, no, Dimple, I don't need you. Quit being evil. And blows him off.
Not just that, he goes, the leader they need is not you, it's me. And I was like, wow, that's mean for Mob. Like he was being very matter of fact about it, but yeah, it was like, oh, ouch.
In the dub, did he say stop scheming? Would you stop scheming already?
Yeah, he does say that.
Okay, yeah.
No, he goes, can't you give the schemes a rest?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. Yeah. And boy, did that, man, Dimple did not take that well.
Dimple leaves after their fight. And then he tells Regan about the cult. And Regan's like, oh, this looks scammy. This looks bad. They're going to make a lot of money. You should go.
And tell him you have a master.
Followers?
Yeah, tell him you have a master. And gives him money to go buy an outfit, which he does with the help of Hanazawa. This is the blonde-haired psychic boy, like one of his first fights from season 1. Always keeps getting bald and having to wear wigs. That's kind of his thing. But he takes him out shopping. And so I do want to talk about Hanazawa. What are your guys' thoughts on him this season were?
He provided really cool battle moments. But beyond that, I'm not. Besides his big showdown with Mob, I'm not sure like how impactful his presence was in the story. Like
Yeah.
he was good. I enjoyed his addition to it, but he didn't seem to be as impactful as I thought he might be as like a what he calls out, I'm your rival. It's like, well, I
Well, I
mean,
think that was.
he seems to be the one that puts up the best fight out of
Mhm.
everyone, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the rival thing just goes back to like season 1, like a declaration he made back then, he's making again now. Because even though he lost horribly, he at least managed to protect the people, which kind of makes him a rival in the ideal, right? The morality of it right now, because look, the tables have turned, right now you're letting loose, you don't care, your power is all that matters to you and you're going to use it, but I'm the one that's sacrificing myself to protect other people. And
I don't fully remember what his evil thing was back in season 1, but it does feel like him choosing to save people instead of continue the fight was very much the resolution of his arc. He's no
Yeah.
longer the top on his priority list. He's putting others first
Yep.
and using his powers to help others instead of boost himself.
Yeah.
Even though it meant losing.
Yeah. I think the thing I liked about him was that he shows up early in the season and he shows up pretty frequently in the season compared to some of the other characters that show up. And so having him show up in the final arc, that final last few episodes, and engage and be a part of resolving that was actually like, it felt right because he was present all this time. He didn't come in from left field or anything, right? And also just the fact that I had completely forgotten that the hair thing was a running gag with him. And so like when it happened during the fight, I was like, oh crap, what did you do, Mom? What did you do to this poor guy? And then
Same thing
later
he always does.
yeah, I realized it later. I was like, oh, that's right. Okay.
I will say, Tie Sword, one of the coolest
Yeah, that is cool.
visuals I've seen in that's not true. We just watched Chainsaw Man. I can't say that anymore. But Tie Sword was really cool because he had this cool sword, and then suddenly it turned back into his tie, and I'm like, oh, that was perfect because it had the loop. It was a very good design. Whoever thought that was clever.
that I also liked that Sawazawa had he had a sword as well,
Still
made
cards.
of business cards.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
it was very effective.
All right, so they go shopping, and Mob only has a limited amount of money. He's like, let's do this. He's like, that's expensive. Let's do this. That's expensive. And he convinces them to buy this hideous shirt with monkey faces all over it and like pointy sleeves, like multiple pointy sleeves. Like someone took scissors and chopped mountains on.
Did
Really
a
bad.
chevron pattern with it.
Yeah. So Mob's getting ready to go meet with one of the girls, Tomei, I think, first.
Mm-hmm.
And then go check out the cult, and his brother sees him in the shirt. He's like, oh man, that shirt's terrible, but he's like, okay, maybe wear your jacket. and it's later that Regan sees him, but yeah, later Regan also says, put on your jacket. Anyway, he goes, and no one shows up.
Stats.
None of the girls
Yeah.
show up to meet him. He just tries calling them. No one answers. Eventually his phone dies, and then Regan's watching the stream of the cult, and all these people are arguing about who the leader is going to be, and a guy looking just like Mob appears, but he's all plantish,
Yeah, he's gnarly.
and he looks more like the poster than actual looking like Mob. And he's like, I'm the founder, and everyone's like, no, we don't believe you, and he makes a little broccoli tree, so everyone then does believe him. My only real issue with this was trying to hide the fact that this was Dimple when it was super obviously it was Dimple.
Yeah.
Like they set it up in the first episode, Dimple coming to the trees and going to the tree and getting powerful. He's now a spiky instead of wavy. It was clearly going to be Dimple, and they're like, who could it be?
Yeah.
It's Dimple.
Obvious broccoli dimple is obvious.
Right?
I mean, he was already green.
So when
They even
Mob...
used the same voice actor for him too. So
Yeah.
it's just funny. It's like didn't even hide it.
So the next day at school, Mob's like asking the girls where they were, and they're like, "Oh, we were at the cult, and like Tomei has joined the cult, and everyone's been joining this cult, and everyone's starting to pray." Ritsu notices like a lot of people in the what is he on this the council, school student body council, whatever
Yeah.
it is. They're like multiple people there want to pray to the divine tree, and he's like, okay, that's weird. And then Hanazawa is given cookies by a girl because he always is, and he eats it, and it's one of the broccoli cookies. And he's suddenly like, I worship the divine tree. And then he like throws up, makes himself throw up, and he's like, okay, that's brainwashing stuff. So all these people are eating this tree food in smoothies and cookies and candy, and it's brainwashing them into becoming followers. So he goes to the tree, he starts he finds the founder and he starts attacking him. And as soon as he sees the founder's like, "You're a worshiper." He's like, "I'm a worshiper." "Ah, no, not again." And then he's like, "Dimple, I know it's you." And I was like, "Yeah, Dimple, we know it's you." And he has a big battle with Dimple, and he ends up losing.
Which at first you didn't think he was going to, but
And then Regan, Regan keeps getting stupid jobs of fixing people's houses because of the roots of the tree are ruining all the buildings. And so he's like, okay, Mob, we got to get rid of this tree. And Mob's told him about, like, I didn't join the cult. He's like, yeah, it's this other guy who took over the cult. He's like, well, let's just go get rid of the tree. He's like, how are we going to do that? You and your brother can lift it into the ocean. So they go get Ritsu, and he's like telling them, like, yeah, everyone's acting weird, and they gave me this candy, and he eats the candy, and he's like, oh, actually, let's go to the Civic Center. And they go there, and he's like, we all worship the divine tree. And Regan's like, oh, this is an evil cult. We need to run.
Yep.
And they do, and this is where he sees Mob's shirt, because he takes off his jacket from running. And he's like, oh, you should put the jacket on. It has more defensive points. Yeah. And then they keep going towards the tree, and then eventually Regan's like, if you think about it, the founder's right. The cult's right. And so Regan has become brainwashed we find out later, just from the amount of influence in the city. You don't have to ingest the tree to become influenced, that there's just enough people you can get brainwashed. So Mob goes alone, and then there's all these people gathered around the tree, and they're cheering him as he goes into the tree. And the crowd recognizes him, and he goes in. And when he gets inside, he's confronted by the founder. And he's like, Dimple, I know it's you. But Dimple won't show himself. He keeps making bodies of the founder that, again, looks just like Mob, but tree-like. And Mob keeps battling him and destroying him. And he's like, why aren't you coming out? And eventually Mob realizes his power is being drained by the tree. And so Dimple does appear. And he's like, hey, I'm going to win. I'm now a god. He takes this new golden god form.
Again, something that looks like straight out of JoJo.
JoJo.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Mob keeps getting angrier and angrier. At one point, Dimple mentions, like, Takane's never going to like you. And Mob just grabs him and, like, body slams him. He does the Hulk on Loki move, like, bam, 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 bam. Or does he slap him?
Yeah.
Is it a slap?
He started with slapping.
Okay.
And then started
slamming.
slamming.
Yeah. And like he has to fight Hanazawa, who's now been brainwashed, and he ends up throwing him from the tree. But he keeps not really attacking Dimple, and Dimple keeps doing like bigger attacks, and then Mob will block it. He's like, oh, he still has power left. Or he's like, oh, if I hit him just hard enough to knock him down. But Dimple's also, you can tell, is not going all out. He'll hit him and be like, oh, I went a little too hard on that one. And then Mob super powers up. And then all his energy is gone. And Dimple's like, oh, I'm going to win. And he makes a spike. And Mob's like, oh. And then he sees Mob's shirt. And he starts yelling at him and laughing at him. Like,
him
look
for
how
wearing
stupid that shirt is. Why would you go out? Was that on purpose? Why would
Who
you
made
do
you
that?
wear that?
I am worried about you. What is wrong with you?
And so this brings Mob's meter to 100. And it's 100% trust. And he like walks right into the spike that Dimple has, and the spike goes around his head instead of touching him because Dimple won't hurt him. Dimple's his friend, and he's like, Dimple, you're the only guy who told me the truth about this shirt, and I trust you completely. And I love this because he's like, I should have listened to you about taking over the cult. He's like, you don't think I should take over the cult? It's like, I don't think you should take over the cult. But I should have listened to you anyway because I'm your friend. Shouldn't have just dismissed you, and I'm sorry for that. And he's like, I just want to be your friend. And then Dimple's like, even though I've become a god, I do feel kind of empty, and I guess all I really wanted was a friend. And so that's the conflict resolution.
Yep.
They talked it out, man.
Right?
Now, the reason that this is so cool is because Mob has over and over again escalated to higher and higher 100% to defeat his opponents. And this time just letting go of all of that and resolving it with words. That's something that's so new. Like you were saying at the beginning, Jason, you just don't see this. It's not what we're programmed to expect from Shonen.
I love his statement of, my power was getting in the way of us just talking.
Mm-hmm.
What? That'd never come out of Goku's mouth, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it was like, hey, we're friends. No matter how much we beat each other up, we're still gonna have to talk this out. So let's just talk this out now.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Dimple's just like, Mom's like, I can't move. I'm so tired. He's like, get on my back. I'll take you home.
Yeah. How does this stand up to Talk no Jutsu?
I was about to ask you the same question because you have been especially adamant about Talk no Jutsu not being your favorite thing.
Yeah, and it's not, because ordinarily those people that are doing Talk no Jutsu, that becomes kind of a trope of theirs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's even called Talk no Jutsu, no Jutsu, right? Is because it's being done a lot, and so I think it loses some of its impact if it's just another version of combat that's used in this particular story. But in this case, we're coming out of a context of he has overflowing power. He could annihilate Dimple. I really believe that. I don't think Dimple stood a chance. And so
I think Dimple knew that too.
Yeah.
I fully believe Dimple was ready to lose, wanting to lose. Let's get this back to normal, our relationship back to normal. Come beat me, but I have to go through the motions.
Yeah. Well, and I almost got the impression that it wouldn't even go back to what it was. Wouldn't even go back to normal. I got the impression that it would be the end for Dimple. And when he said, I guess I'll have to, I can't remember what word he used exactly, but to me, it came across as destroy you. That's what, there was something Dimple said. It really pissed Mob off. And he's like, I guess I'll have to kill you now, basically. And so, yeah, so I think that is, to me, what makes it very different from Talk no Jutsu is it's contrasted against previous actions of this character, and it shows the growth. It shows that now he's in so much control of himself that he's able to simply let go of all of those emotions. That the issue before was when he reaches 100%, well, he can't suppress it anymore, period. And he doesn't know how to let it go. He can't do that. But at this point, this is the first time that we're seeing that he's actually able to just let it go. He doesn't have to fight to conclude this. And yeah, so it shows the growth of a character. And it's not really repeated either. So it doesn't become a trope or a cliche.
Right. A big difference, I think, too, is in Naruto, he'll talk no jutsu them, but he still also has to punch them and defeat them in the fight. And then they'll be like, oh, you beat me so bad, your point must be valid.
Right.
That's how Naruto actually works. It's
okay.
Oh, you're so powerful, your point must be more valid than mine. Which is insane. This is an actual talk, I'm not here to combat. And because Mob is mostly a pacifist, has only fought when he had to, has only fought to help people, it completely makes sense that this is the choice he would make. And I love the phrase that Mob uses in that you just got carried away. I got carried away too, talking about his 100% ego boost that he had. And he's like, that happens to people. You're trying to do what you want to do, and you just go a little too far, or you get a little too full of yourself. And there was just something about the way he connected. My mistake and your mistake are the exact same mistake, and we just ran into each other, and we can work through this. That was just beautiful symmetry to it.
Also, one thing that I was thinking about just now, Dimple, like when we first meet him, he's in control of a cult. Like that's kind of his evil spirit thing to do. He gets a hold of an enormous cult this time around, and we come to the realization that that is not what's bringing him satisfaction. And it's just it doesn't feel the same, and he hasn't done anything evil with his cult except for brainwash people, but he doesn't make them do anything bad.
Right.
So
And he even points out they're still the same people. He's not making them like bow to him all day long. Like they're still going about their club activities. They're the same people. They just also are happy because they're connected to my cult.
Yeah.
but I
And they
did
give him
like
like 2
that.
minutes a day or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did like that he didn't just give it up because we're friends now. He also gave it up a little more willingly because it didn't give him that same satisfaction that he had in season 1, because that's not what he was looking for. It's just what he was used to doing.
Yeah, it seems like he changed.
It comes back to what I mentioned earlier of there's a foundation to what I wanted before that I need to dig down to. And his was, no one noticed me or saw me, and I just wanted to be a part of something. I wanted to be connected to someone. And thus I expressed that by, I'll become a god and control a cult. But the real thing he wanted was being given to him by Mob the whole time. And especially now that Mob is saying, I'm your friend, let's go talk this out. And so he's like, okay, I'm good. So good character resolution.
So good.
Of course, he won't get to go and talk it out.
So he's carrying Mob Hope because Mob is exhausted now. And he's like, I get to keep my god form for another week. It'll probably take a week for the powers to drain out. And he's taking him home, and the psycho helmet appears again, looking just like Dimple used to make him look. And he's like, leave that kid. And he's like, I'm not doing that. There's so much energy. His will has gone into the tree so much. The tree has become sentient and now wants Mob as a battery. And so he ends up with this big giant fight. And I love this because it was like, hey, violence is not the solution. But also we're Studio Bones and we're about to blow your mind anyway.
Yeah.
So we get this God Dimple versus 100 shadow helmet tree men who can shoot laser god cannons out their mouths.
Oh my! When the broccoli sprouted, like hundreds of them, and they're all just torsos sticking out, and then they start shooting like they're turrets.
Like they're turrets.
Yes, I was cracking up.
So if you don't watch the series, go YouTube this fight because it's beautiful.
Cool.
It's Studio Bones that they're doing what they do best, and it's great. And then the ending is like him getting blasted a bunch, and then Mob wakes up and Dimple's there, and it's Dimple in his spirit form, and he's like, "Hey Mob, I need you to get up and go home." And then we see what's really happening is he's still in his god form, but his leg and arm are missing. And he's like, I have enough power to brainwash you, and you're so tired you can't stop me. And he brainwashes Mob, and he's like, you need to walk home. And Mob's like, I'm too tired. He's like, nope, you got to do it anyway. So Mob gets up and he walks, and as he's walking back, Dimple's waving to him, and it's all fine. And then it shows what's really happening. And God Dimple is sitting there, half destroyed, and there's these giant 2 eyes.
Amazing shot.
Jeremy sent me a picture of this. Is like, this is so cool.
Yeah. It's so because not a word is said about it. We just know that what Dimple is showing to him isn't true, but we haven't really seen it until this moment when we see that he's missing body parts, and it's like it's zooming out, and the farther it zooms out, the more you see, oh, those are eyes. Oh, that thing's huge, and it's just watching as he's sending him out. It's so cool, so well done.
So Mob leaves and then tells the crowd to leave, and then and Dimple is eaten. Mm-hmm. And then when he gets home, it's like a day later, Reitz was like, hey, I haven't seen Dimple in a while. Mm-hmm. And then they turn on the news and the tree is lifting up into space. And Mob goes to his room and he can't remember what happened, but he knows that Dimple saved him, and he goes to bed crying that night.
Yeah, very touching. Now, I am a little bit confused about how, since in the wiki it does say that Dimple is resurrected later, so seems like this is when he dies. I'm wondering, like, is this the case of Superman and Doomsday dying, and it looks like Doomsday got the last blow, but somehow Superman killed him? Is it kind of like that, where Dimple, he got eaten, and it looked like the plant creatures? I mean, you even hear like the shattering of gold, which I don't think that's the sound of gold shattering. It sounded more like aluminum or steel or something.
I
But
can explain it.
okay,
So
please do.
Dimple had this planet where he made clones of himself and had all these star destroyers hidden underneath the
Yeah.
ice, full of people all along. We just didn't know about it. And somehow Dimple has returned.
You subverted my expectations. Thank you.
You're welcome. So my understanding of that, from what Dimple said later, is that because Mob believed I was alive, I am alive when Mob's at full power. But I guess my thought was, where does a dead spirit go when it dies? New Jersey? Like,
Well,
Right?
Ritsu mentioned something about like telling him that he just passed on.
About
So,
Dimple?
yeah, so I guess spirits do just pass on to the next life or whatever in this
That would
world.
make sense. That would fit in with a lot of the other stories that I've heard from anime and other sources.
in the Regan manga, they ask Dimple what happens to spirits after they die. He says he doesn't know.
So that would mean that he hasn't died or doesn't remember. Or is simply denying. Won't tell them.
Yeah. He's the
It
kind of
is
person
Dimple.
who would be a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I guess in the end I didn't have a problem with it because it worked so perfectly, and I'll explain that a little bit better when we get to the scene when Dimple returns. Because I think it super matters that Dimple's there, not just for technical reasons, but for thematic, emotional reasons.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
I'm not convinced, so I'm curious to hear.
Okay. I'm going to go really fast to the next arc because it's not crazy important. And this is sort of like, oh, this is all an epilogue for sure.
Yeah.
Because Tomei, who's a major character in the Rican manga, look, I read a manga for like the second time ever.
You're so proud of
And
yourself.
I'm touting it like I'm a manga reader now. I'm not. I'm not.
You've leveled up. You're in a new class now.
Get on my level, everybody.
That's right.
All right. So this is about the occult club who still hangs out in the club room that's not technically theirs. And Tomei has realized she's graduating soon, and they haven't done anything except for eat snacks and play video games like they always do. And she's super freaked out about it, and she actually dismisses the club, disbands it. They freak out, so they go to Mob. Mob's brother is like, hey, if you need telepaths, I know telepaths. And we go back to the two brothers from season 2 who could talk to each other. There's this great line about, like, when he's at the store, I can tell him to bring home this ice cream. And Ritsu's like, you could also just call on your cell phone.
Especially because it like takes a ton of effort, he says.
Yeah. I love how Mob Psycho constantly points out, you don't need psychic powers to do the things you want to do. You can just do them anyway. And so Mob, they decided, okay, we're going to send out a signal and try to find better telepaths. And then Mob will amplify the signal, and then we'll just make a lot of noise, and hopefully a telepath will come in. While they're doing it, one of the original club members who left to go join tennis club shows up, and he starts yelling at them, and they realize he can hear the noise. He is actually a telepath the whole time. He wasn't just a jerk. He actually went there to find other telepaths, realized they were just a stupid, didn't care club, and left. But he hates being a telepath. He wears earplugs so he can't hear people's thoughts. But they convince him to help. Mob does by relating to his powers. Like, yeah, I get it. Powers sometimes suck. Then they get Regan to drive them. There's a whole thing about like cell phones not working and alarm clocks not working. And I thought that must be because the UFO, by the way, a UFO is showing up. But they never had anyone like actually connect those things. Did you guys?
I didn't see a connecting thread, but my favorite part of this next scene is Reagan wakes up late, but everyone else is also late. So he gets there 2 minutes before them, acting like he's been there for an hour. And they're like, "We're so sorry, we're late." He's like, "Don't worry about it. I understand." But he's just sweating profusely because he'd been running.
Yep.
Yeah, multiple characters are late, and like cell phones aren't working. But yeah, they all drive up into the mountains. Regan drives into the mountains, but he misses the trail, and then they like, we'll just walk back to the trail, but people have to go to the bathroom, and they all end up get lost in the woods, and they find the path, and they eventually walk up to the top, and Tomei is like, she's pissed. She's like, you're telling me this guy who quit is a telepath this whole time. This is all a trick.
This is one of my pet peeves that, like, as far as contrivances, it's like he just got like everyone just got showing off Esper abilities in the club room. She shows up and doesn't believe them. Why didn't he show her his telepathic abilities? Like the entire time, he just hides it from her. I don't get it.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
She's so mad that she feels like conned into going on this trip and like feeling a pity party for her because she disbanded the group and they feel bad. And all it would have taken was one thought of, "Hey, I can read your mind."
Yeah, for the telepath. It seemed like he was more concerned about showing her that UFOs were real than proving the telepathy, which is weird because I would think that one or the other would be equally awesome for her.
But she literally calls out, he's not even a telepath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just wait, I'll show you a UFO.
Pet peeve. Go on, Troy.
Yep.
Okay. I took it as I don't want to pull the blindfold off for the surprise party till we're there, but I get it. She's whining. She's about to leave, and he could be like, "No, look, I'm the real deal. Pull out my earplugs and show you."
Well, like the other people in the party were telling her that. Like, they literally told her he is. And he's like, "I will not prove it."
Mob convinced her to keep going. They go to the top, and they're like, "Oh, we forgot the book with the spell we're supposed to do." And then he starts doing it, and you realize he stayed up all night learning it so he could do the ritual properly. And then Regan's like, if you kept doing your research, you would realize that book was full of crap. This is clearly a con. And they're like, "Oh, well, let's do it anyway." And Mob boosts the signal, and a UFO shows up, guys.
Who'd have thunk it?
I actually thought it was going to be the divine tree came back. I thought for sure that's where they was going because they said that's going into space, and then they're trying to call in a UFO. Good. And I thought for sure the tree was coming back, and they was going to tie in together there. But nope. It's just a bunch of pink aliens with Sailor Moon eyes.
And mini skirts. It's so weird.
It is. And they go into their spaceship, and they have TVs and snacks, and they show them video games. So really they're doing what they do in the club room with them the whole time.
Yeah.
Regan's sitting on a beanbag chair like the late fee on my rental car is gonna get written up. And so yeah, they party with him. Tomei gets a jewel, which makes an appearance in the manga.
I was about to say, never comes back up.
Yep.
It does come back.
A clearly not important jewel that doesn't matter and will never be seen again.
Like some of us do.
Oh jeez. Oh my god.
100% high horse.
Look, it's Giga Troy.
Chad Troy.
I love that they send him back down after this visit, except for one of them.
Yes, one guy they decide to keep. You know what though? Like during the going away sequence, when they're excuse me, they're getting ready to leave and they're all giving something to the aliens. One of the aliens turns and points at the blonde kid that they wind up abducting. Like, yeah, this one right here. And when I saw that, I was like, "What? Wow, she really likes him." And then, yeah, liked him enough to keep him.
And then he has his own like side adventure for the rest of the episode.
Pardon the phrasing, but I'm pretty sure this kid had an alien orgy in space.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like they brought him to some place and they just fed him things he has no idea what he ate, which apparently put him into a drug stupor, and he starts doing naked cartwheels across a stage in the middle of a coliseum, surrounded by these aliens who are all cheering. Like it's a weird fever dream trip of what happened to him, and it's presented so well, and it's presented like it's part of some very grand, extremely long, many years story. But then when they bring him back,
he even changes
it's
physiologically too.
Yeah, but then he's back to normal exactly when they drop him off. Well, I mean, except for his eyes.
Yeah,
his eyes.
I'm
that
pretty
seems to be on call.
I'm pretty sure it turned out that this guy was just a dandy guy in space.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah, but what was up with his eyes changing in the final episode?
Oh, well, remember when he was able to communicate with them? If you look deeply enough into their eyes really want to, tell them, think about what you want from them, then you will connect to them, and when you connect to them, you get their eyes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So he comes back. He has no memory of it, but clearly kind of remembers it.
Yeah. He's suppressing it.
that was the alien plotline. Not my favorite. So it was just, but after Dimple just dying and the big story that's about to come, it was kind of like all right, here's something silly.
I was not a fan of the episode, but the very ending of it with the kid being abducted blew my mind, and I love that.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so we come back to the real story. We get Mob dreaming about his crush, Takane, and then he finds out in school that day that she's going to be moving away, and he decides he's got to confess his feelings to her.
Along with the entire school.
Everyone else in the school.
Good luck, Mob.
So he goes to who we haven't mentioned yet, just some of the greatest side characters ever, the Body Improvement Club, man.
Fight on.
I love the Body Improvement Club. Just the idea that they love Mob so much, not because he's not swole or super big like them. It's about the effort he's putting in, and that's what they respect, and that's so gosh dang healthy.
They have him take off his shirt. They start smacking him.
Yep.
Look at these muscles. You've earned. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, they give him some encouragement, which isn't very helpful. He asked the telepathy club what he should do. They suggest a new hairstyle. But then we see, Takane having the entire school in line to confess her feelings. She's turning them down one by one. Mob finds out about this from the reporter girl. And she's like, yeah, I wouldn't get in line. She's just a machine right now, turning people down. You don't want to do it that way. So he talks to Regan about it. Regan gives him some advice. And then he talks to Hanazawa, who's like, you should buy some flowers for her. So he decides he's going to do that. And then that night he calls her on his cell phone. This is when he has the One Punch Man on his cell phone. He calls her on his cell phone. And he's like super nervous, but he does it. Like when his mom walked in, I'm like, oh, he's going to hang up and chicken out. And he doesn't. He just moves to a different room. And he's like, I need to talk to you. Will you meet me in the park tomorrow after school? And she's like, what's wrong with your voice? He's like, nothing's wrong with my voice. You're totally imagining it. But he manages to talk to her on the phone. Good for Mob.
Mm-hmm.
Then he goes and he buys some flowers. And then I think a former villain gives him a big bouquet of flowers to replace the little bouquet that he had bought.
The single flower.
There's like 3 in there.
Oh, okay.
It's a purple-haired plant guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he even mentions to himself that like it's the thought that counts.
All right, Jason, you ready to do this? Battle time. All right, so Mob is standing on a street corner, and a cat crosses the street, and he uses his psychic powers to stop a car from hitting it, and he saves the cat. And then a small child playing a video game walks out in front of him and is also about to be hit by a car. And Mob jumps out and pushes him out of the way and is hit by the car instead. And that's how the episode ends. Jason, you have a major issue with this or a minor issue? You should classify it.
I understand why they needed him to get in an accident at this point in the story. It needed to happen to where he loses control of himself. I get that. I think the scene is stupid because he literally just used his endless, what's been established is endless amounts of power to stop a vehicle safely. And he literally could have done it again a second time. No issue. And there's 100 different ways we could have had him get hurt without him activating his powers to get him into this state. But we chose to do it in a way where it's like, hey, I just used my powers to stop an accident. Oh, another accident that shows up. What should I do? Oh, I'm not going to use my powers. I'm going to run out in front of the vehicle. That's dumb.
No, that's the whole point. That's everything. There's no way it's an accident. There's no way they took the time to animate him saving the cat psychically when they didn't need to. They could have just left that out, and then you'd be like, oh, you could have saved it psychically, but I guess he didn't think about it. They literally show him instinctively using his psychic powers to save something, and then choosing not to use his powers to save someone once he's thinking about it.
Why?
He's rejecting his powers. That's the whole thing that's about to happen, is that he rejects his powers.
But he literally just used them a half second earlier.
Instinctively, and he regrets it.
Why did he regret it?
That is not portrayed. That is not portrayed.
It is not, but there's no way it's an accident. There's no way they purposely showed him use his powers.
No, that he regretted it. Like, that's an assumption you're making, in my opinion.
But why show him save the cat psychically for any reason?
That's what I'm wondering.
But there has to be a reason. They have to animate that. They have to choose to display that in front of us. So they're literally saying this is important. He saved the cat with his psychic powers and then didn't save the boy with his psychic powers. That's an important choice they made. It's not an accident. Right. It's not a mistake. I think
it's a poor choice.
I think it comes back to Mob rejecting his powers. I think that's what they're trying to show us. And I do think they should have had a scene of like him furrowing his brow. Like, why did I do that? And it's not there. I checked. He does one thing and then he chooses not to do it again.
I think the scene would have been better if he was crossing the street, someone distracted him, and then he gets hit.
Right.
Because then he's not using his powers. He gets hit for real because he's not prepared to use his psychic abilities to protect himself in any way. And then we get the same result of him.
You could drop a piano on him and get the same result.
Sure.
It's important. Again, they're choosing to make sure that we see him use his powers and then not use them. It's not an accident. There's no way it's an accident.
I think it's a contradiction. I think it's a plot hole.
It's too much work for a plot hole. It's a self-made plot hole.
I understand the work you're trying to infer, and that's the problem with this scene, is you have to infer a lot of things on Mob because nothing is either explicitly shown or explicitly told to you why he would have regretted saving the cat with his powers.
But I'm saying him saving the powers is the explicitly shown. They didn't have to do that. They could have just had him jump in front of a car. Getting to him to be unconscious is not the point of this scene because they can do that a million different ways.
Okay, then
showing him choosing to not use his powers and then getting unconscious is the point of this scene.
Yeah, I disagree with you.
Okay. So I'll throw my 2 cents in. This has been really fun to listen to, though. I don't get this very often.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Only because I got stuck on it too. Because it's something that I'm like, why one and then the other, and why bother showing us? So it's been in my head. Okay, go ahead.
So my 2 cents after listening to both your guys' argument, you definitely got a point, Troy. Like why they would bother to do this, but I don't think they executed it well. If this is what they're trying to do, To me, that scene came across as him instinctually reacting in both situations. In one situation, he reacted with his eyes where we were able to see it, right? Like where the cat, it just shows him, it shows his reaction, shows him seeing it and reacting. With the kid, it shows him bending over to pick up his bag, and then like everything happens off screen, basically. So that, to me, that kind of shooting implies that there's an even more instinctual reaction taking place. Like there's
Maybe.
less time for a reaction to be viewed.
I'm one thing I'll admit, I don't fully understand the scene. I just think there is a reason behind it, and I don't think it's a whole. I think it's trying to tell us something. I don't, and so I also agree it's probably not executed as best as it could be because I don't fully understand what they're trying to say. I have my guesses.
Yeah.
I probably like yours better, that this was the choice and then the instinct was to jump.
Yeah, that's almost what it seems like. But there's something else that's confusing to me, and I think it relates to this, is at the very end of everything, when we're all done and we're tying up all the loose ends, there's a cat that's stuck in on a top of a telephone pole near a tree. And Mob climbs the telephone pole in the hopes of rescuing the cat, still deliberately choosing not to use his powers in a situation where it would be obvious to use them, right? And this comes after deciding that he's no longer going to suppress his powers, and he's now accepting them, but he's still not using them. Yeah, but
he does use his powers one more time in that episode. After that scene, he catches the cake with his powers.
I thought it was Sarazawa that caught it.
No, it's Mob.
I didn't realize who did it. Interesting.
I'm sure it's Mob.
Okay.
I'm sure it's Sarazawa.
I'll bet you $100. I'll bet you $100. No, I won't. My wife said I gotta quit giving away money in bad bets.
Too much fantasy football, are we?
No, because of the Denver Broncos season, I now have a Seattle Seahawks car in Rocket League. So my gambling has been shut off.
Oh no.
Oh, that's great.
Anyway.
So I guess all I'm trying to say there is that if we're talking about Mob's motivation, I'm kind of confused about where he's starting from and where he's ending at and how different that really is. I know what I've been told has changed, but what I'm being presented with isn't necessarily matching up with that 100%. Also, so that's why this is confusing to me.
One other thing that also is like eating at me is he literally just got punched by a god. And then a car takes him out.
And another thing that we got to consider is there have been multiple times, and I don't know if it's just like, hey, I'm going to call this speed of light move, or if it really is speed of light move. But his reaction time, Mob's reaction time, I really don't think is on our level. I'm pretty sure his reaction time is up there with, super powered action heroes. So to think that his instinctual reaction would be slow enough to where he wouldn't be able to use his abilities, wouldn't have time, I find that really hard to believe when he's done that against psychic opponents or against like rocks that were falling at him, things like that.
Buildings smashing him.
Yeah. I'm sure he's got like some shields that just automatically pop up, like instinctual protection.
He's been knocked out before, caught off guard by a fight before, hasn't he? Wasn't there a whole thing in season 2 about like the Body Improvement Club like protecting him because he got knocked out before a fight even really started and didn't see it coming? I forget why he was knocked out, but I remember like the leader like being over him and protecting him as he just laid on the ground.
I wonder if
I remember that too, but it wasn't
powers too much or something.
No, I thought it was because he got hit off guard. And this thing, if you're running after to save some child, being off guard doesn't work for me.
Yeah, if you have the time to run, you have the time to use your power.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
I understand the necessity of the scene.
Yeah.
I do. And I think it made for a better story overall. But
only in the knocking him out, though. Do you understand that they're purposely showing him choosing not to use his powers?
Mm-hmm.
See,
but they still show him choosing not to use his powers
Right.
after with the cat.
It's a cat again. That's not a coincidence either. These two scenes are connected. This is and again, I am not smart enough to figure it out. Someone needs to come into the comments and be like, "Here's what one is trying to say with the or maybe Studio Bones, whoever came up with this." There's a scene with powers, a scene without powers, and then on the flip side, a cat without powers, and then a scene with powers. And why that matters after the acceptance part. But I do think it matters. I think it's a pivotal growth moment. I just can't fully flesh it out myself.
I just don't like it.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to say that with us mid-tier IQ people like Jason and I,
room temperature.
Yeah, room temperature. It's just unpleasant. It does not. It comes across as if it's not thought out and as if it's just a cheap, artificial way to push the story into where it's trying to go, where it needs to go.
It felt arbitrary the way it was presented. If it intended to say something else, which I tend to believe you, Troy, that it was intending to say something else, I didn't get that message while watching it or thinking about it later.
So you guys spell it out for us.
Yeah, I guess I just feel if he had just gotten hit, if they had skipped the cat and had him just jump out and got hit, that would have been arbitrary. Like dropping a piano. We need to knock out Mob. Boom, there it is. Then it'd be like, yeah, that's just we pushed the dominoes in the way we wanted it and got it done. The fact that they took out the time for the cat just
the thing is,
it sticks out like a sore thumb for sure.
We've spent 2.5 seasons knowing Mob doesn't like using his powers. So if that's the case, then that feels ham-fisted.
How could it be ham-fisted if we can't even figure it out?
I'm saying if that was the intention, because that, like, why do I need to be told again?
I really hope someone's still listening to this. I want some theories on this, or tell me I'm wrong. Just tell me like, man, they just wanted to show Mob saving a cat, man. You quit overthinking things. That could be it too, and I'm fine with that. But I would love to hear some theories on this. There's got to be more, especially again, a cat comes up at the end.
It's got to be linked, right?
Automatically linked, man.
I'm imagining Troy with a yarn from one point to another. And it's just like,
there has to be something deeper here.
I got it. All right. All right. So yeah, he's knocked out, hit by a car. We see people gathering around Mob, bleeding on the ground, and then his powers suddenly turn on. We just see a huge crater around him show up, and then the city begins to shake, and we learn there's an evacuation order in progress, and Mob is basically marching from one end of the city to the other to get to the
people's
park.
electronics stop working too, which I find really interesting.
Phones are having issues, and he's just weaving path.
Yeah, because the guy who hit him, I thought he was gonna run, and I loved that he was like responsible enough to be like, "Oh, I just hurt him. I need to call for help," and he can't call for emergency services because his phone isn't working.
And then Vegeta gets up and starts walking down the street.
So this is question mark Mob, who's made maybe 3 appearances in all of Mob Psycho. It is the subconscious version of Mob, the hidden, all suppressed emotions at once. It's not actual Mob, but it is in its own way, which we come to explain, which I love, because that was a hanging plot thread of what the heck is that question mark, and you kind of got it, but to have him actually have to confront that persona and have them discuss what's going on, I thought was beautiful. All right, so Hanazawa shows up and starts battling with Mob, trying to like suppress him and like, hey man, you look like you're having some issues, and I'm here to help. I'm sorry about tying you up. I'm gonna tie you up, and he starts trying to destroy the flowers, which becomes a thing. Like everyone's trying to break the flowers, and Mob is super active at protecting the flowers.
Yeah, because he barely engages his opponent the entire time. But the moment the flowers leave his hand, his attention 100% directs to it. And that's when he was like, oh, if I destroy the flower. And then that was a terrible decision.
Yeah. Maybe I'll destroy the flower. Whoa!
Yeah, so he multiple time blasts Hanazawa away until the point where they reach like a because they're in the forest at first, but eventually they reach buildings and people are in danger, and so Hanazawa is trying to save the people. Mobs blasting him, and
Hanazawa reaches the buildings first.
yeah, and Hanazawa gets all his clothes and top of his hair blasted off.
Yep.
And this we already talked about. This is his resolution though, is that instead of focusing on the fight or just trying to be better than Mob, he declares himself a rival, but he chooses to save the people out of the rubble with his last power, remaining of his power, and then he loses and Mob walks on.
Actually, I love that he says, because I save the people, I win.
Yep.
That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Mob awakens inside, the real Mob awakens inside his own mind and can see what's happening and is literally cheering on Hanazawa. Like, you gotta beat me. Can't let this keep going.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned like the real Mob. What we come to find out is like they are, or at least I think Ritsu figures this out. They are one and the same.
Right.
There's just two sides of the same person.
I guess to that end, because we do have Mob talking to himself, we need a name for both.
Well, what's his real name?
Well,
because that's how they distinguish each other in the sub. Or dub.
Shigeo?
Shigeo.
Yes,
Shigeo.
that's right. Yeah, so the power side of him claims to be Shigeru, and Shigeo, and he calls the persona version of Mob, or the one that's not in control, Mob. Okay. He calls him Mob.
Yeah. I love that because he's like, oh, you're Mob. You're the fake one. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, have we all this time been watching a constructed personality that was there to protect the actual real Shigeo, who was so scared? But I mean, obviously it doesn't seem like, since the power wants out, the power wants to be used, so the power isn't hiding. But for a moment there, I was like, this would be so cool if that's what was happening.
Right, but instead it's everyone puts on a public persona and hides their inner self, because that's how you get through life. It's just real.
Yes, it is. It's called the mask. Everybody wears it.
And then if you're a super powerful Esper, it just turns into a powerful monster that's going to destroy a city.
Yes.
All right. So I know, Jeremy, one of your issues is the amount of coincidence, maybe, of characters that start showing up here.
Yeah.
I know that justified. But
there's only two that bug me, and it's the grocery store, the bad guy from season 1, and the sword guy from season 2, or maybe they were both in season 1, who are running a grocery store that just happens to be in Mob's way. Everyone else makes sense. Like, people who know about Mob are seeing his picture and running to find him. People who can sense his energy, that makes sense. A Suicide Squad plotline is a little odd.
Squad. Yep, didn't like Suicide Squad, and I know that it was just because, hey, we need to bring, that's the leader of Claw, right? We need to resolve his relationship with his son. So let's bring him and his son into this and have them do a little fight as well that they're going to lose, so that they can resolve their problems and have their relationship be fixed up and they can go home. And then just in case, because we know a lot of people liked these two characters, we're going to put them in the grocery store, and he's going to have to walk through the grocery store. So he's going to encounter them, and they're just going to be annihilated. Right?
The grocery store is the only one that seems silly to me.
I'd agree with that. That one was silly. Okay, think about it. I love this idea because it spawns a complete side story that doesn't exist, or at least could exist, right? So imagine you're the government of this city, and
and Amanda Waller is running to prison.
I know, right? Do they have bombs in their necks? Is that like, how are they controlling him? How are they controlling him? We know how much of a threat he was in season 2. You're just gonna
Well,
keep that guy in the Suicide Squad,
right?
right?
But the thing is like sending tanks and jets
Will be
and
worthless.
yeah, or the army or police at this guy, that's not going to work. What's your next step? Well, in prison we have all these dudes that are under reform, and if we promise them lighter sentences, they can come. Now I agree, like the leader of Claw, like he could have just walked out of prison literally at any time. What's keeping him there? That's the question. What's keeping him there? That's a cool plot line.
Really? Guess what though? This is the end of the show.
Right.
So
we get
that's
to
a
imagine it whatever we want.
Yeah, right. No, it's the end. We're so busy. Like, okay, if our goal is to tie up all these loose knots, that's a new one for you that just showed up. That did not successfully tie the knot
But
off,
it doesn't
tie the ribbon
okay,
off of this character.
but that whole like side plot, it's like one could be a new manga. Troy would read it. But two,
A resident manga expert.
right? But two, like that side plot has nothing to do with Mob or what's happening within this story. So
Sure.
the fact that whatever it is that's keeping that dude in prison, that doesn't really matter to this, and it also is a bit hand wavy. I agree. They don't give a good reason for A, why he's in prison, and B, why he's on a, what is that, a air to ground vehicle
Yes.
flying towards Mob right now.
I think that the reason is very clear, and that reason is we need to tie up all the loose ends. And so we need a cameo from the leader of Claw.
Again, another contrivancy, just like being hit after using his powers.
Yeah. And
don't bring this back to me. Fight your own battle, man.
So I think if there were less cameos, or if this took, if they were brought in at different times
felt
for
so
different
good.
issues, didn't to me. I did not like it.
Okay, so just to weigh in with my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I definitely think Suzuki needs to be here, and especially his line, "I'm here to, I had to fight you to pay back my debt," he says. I think this character needed to show up no matter what, and I do think it would have been better if he had actually just walked out of prison. Like he sensed Mob, was like, "Okay, it's time to repay my debt. I'm going."
That would have been cool, actually.
I'm taking it as a Easter egg, or maybe even a meme, of the writer talking about Suicide Squad. It is literally the concept of Suicide Squad. Like, hey, we got a bunch of superpower criminals we're gonna drop into a war zone to die for us. So it felt almost like a joke that, and he even kills them all or beats them all up anyway. So it's only him. It felt like a joke, a little something silly. And the grocery store kind of feels like that too, because they don't do anything. It was just like, hey, cameo, little funny joke. So that didn't. Okay, again, the grocery store is contrived and silly. The also, character showing up, I do think, is important, though. I think this is a resolution we needed, because it ties back to Mob, that this man has changed, which was Mob's whole thing in season 2, that everyone can change. I'm going to defeat you and change you. And he has, and we get to see that, and he takes his final step towards completing his character arc.
I don't remember that being a part of,
Oh, that was totally his thing.
Well, that he had to change this guy. I don't remember that, but
it was more in the framing of, I don't want to kill anyone or really hurt anyone. So if I can change you, then you're not a threat anymore.
Okay.
And then he couldn't and had to battle him, and the guy went Omega, or was blowing up, and Mob had to suck up the power. That actually was kind of a talk no jutsu moment. I
love that he goes, you know what? I'm going to do for Mob what he did for me. And then he has a dad moment, and it's like, I can't do it. That felt so good.
Which, again, that's the final step of his character arc, right? Like, I put the psychic life I had ahead of everything else. That was his son's big issue with him. And finally realizes, no, I need to put my family first. And choosing not to do the heroic sacrifice. That never happens. I've never seen someone not choose the heroic sacrifice when that moment came, and being like, no, I have important things I have to be responsible for. I can't be the sacrifice. I'm sorry. God, that was That was good.
Okay, but this guy didn't show up until episode 11.
Yes.
So, like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is not an important character in season 3. This is an important character in season 2. And we don't talk about him until episode 11 of season 3.
That's kind of what I meant when I said like the years in between do it kind of a disservice, because
You're right.
they should have at some point like hinted that he's out there, a scene with him just in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Regan talks to him on the phone. I don't know, something just to remind us he existed and what his whole deal was, because
I didn't know who he was when he
That
showed up
would've
in the
been
helicopter.
That would have been cool if like it's him and his son like over through glass at the prison. He's
Yeah.
like, and he like asked Dad like, Dad, why don't you just like get out of here? You can do it at any time. He's like, then like we find out he's had like a change of heart. Like, no, I need to serve my sons. I did bad stuff. I need to be here right now.
Exactly. I was more.
Plus, I've got this cool side job that they'll take me anywhere to fight bad guys if I need.
Yeah, right. Which I can't talk about. Oops.
there's a crocodile and a shark man.
Yeah.
Guy with boomerang.
Yeah. I was more invested in the purple-haired flower guy because they kept showing me that this character existed, was interacting with the story.
Yes.
He was trying to stop the tree. He was helping Mob out with his
That's
flowers.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
I'll give you. They should have definitely. His name is Suzuki, I think. They should have shown Suzuki and show like they did the flower guy, just to remind us this guy exists, kind of what his deal is for this. It's still good character resolution, but they should have given it some setup in this separate season.
And I
would have rather had that than the alien episode.
Yeah, I agree. Although then how would you resolve them? Gotta resolve them all. But I have one other complaint regarding Suzuki and his son show. And that is that after he decided to do the fatherly thing, which was even more heroic, to walk away from this, right? His son didn't use psychic powers to get out of there. Like, psychic powers are not taboo. They're not bad. Using psychic powers is not bad. But he literally says, yeah, we're going to stop using them. And I'm like, you're in a danger zone. Like, you could die if Mob goes, boom, get out. Use the fastest method at your disposal to get out. Why would you be like, oh, we have changed. We have learned psychic powers are bad. We're not going to use them to get us out of a bad situation.
That was not the lesson that was being told.
That's what he said. He literally said, we're going to stop using them.
No, he did. But he then said, we're not going to use them because we're not going to let them define us.
Why aren't they using them to get off the battlefield?
Because they're out of danger.
They're in the
Mob was having
battlefield.
an episode, so they were like, okay, let's walk away.
And Mob, even at this point, was holding Shigeo back,
right,
from hurting them. So they
saw an opportunity, and they're like, should we help him, like, absorb power or leave? And they were like, well, we'll leave, and so they left.
I'm sorry, but if you have the ability to leave in a run to leave versus crawl to leave, or slowly slug your way away, I don't understand why you don't run. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, Sho could literally suspend his dad in midair with his psychic abilities and then run across the area and be gone.
Yeah, but they were having a father-son moment.
Are you sure? Because they did get their powers drained.
I'm sure they didn't get them drained that much.
Maybe it was. Yeah, you weren't there.
What he drained was the explosion. Because they threw a big explosion ball and they're like, "Oh man, he absorbed that."
That was all their power, though.
Yeah, sure.
I do love that Jeremy's.
Yeah, spirit bomb.
I do love that Jeremy's making a similar argument to the one that I made of something wasn't explicitly shown or told.
Yeah.
But I'm defending this one because I like the ending so much.
I'm okay with inferring this.
Yeah, but I liked how this ended, therefore I'm going to defend it.
That's right, exactly.
All right, we're moving on. We haven't got to the good stuff.
This is all the good stuff. What are you talking about?
The Body Improvement Club shows up.
Oh my
God.
No, they saw him on the cell phone. This makes sense.
No. I'm saying, oh my God, because the scene was hilarious.
To Jeremy, I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
it's just so silly. They're so outclassed. Like this is just. I know that
They
they've
don't
done
know
that
what
before.
espers
They don't
are.
care.
They're not there to stop him. They actually thought he was in danger.
I know, but like it's just
How
no.
dare you?
Knowing at this point that we're gonna get cameos from everybody, seeing each one and how they're brought in, my eyes have been thrown into critical mode. Now when I watch these characters, I'm like, wait a minute, this is okay. I don't know. I think this could have been done maybe a little
You're
different.
missing the obvious one too.
Which one?
Takane just sitting in the park as a tornado approaches.
Right. She even gets up to leave. She's like, maybe I should go.
I'll just
And then she thinks, oh, Mob's voice sure sounded different. I guess I'll go and sit back down as the tornado's coming.
There's no good
Earthquakes
explanation for
everywhere.
it.
No.
I love it anyway. But yeah, that one is a freebie.
Oh.
I agree with you there.
Okay, Body Improvement Club. They all get thrown except for like one of the guys grabs onto Mob, and then he gets thrown. His head's gonna get bashed in, but Ritsu has been tracking down Mob this whole time. That one makes sense.
Saves all of them. Yep.
Ritsu
makes sense. We
saves
even
him.
see Ritsu leave because I mean it's his brother. He senses
He
it.
finds
Yep,
the
totally
accident
get it.
site. He's been tracking the trail. He found Hanazawa. Yeah, Hanazawa earlier
Yep.
too.
Even puts together that he must have been in an accident, which I liked.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
he's
Even
like,
takes
"Wait,
the time
did he
to
save
cover
a
up.
cat with his psychic powers? Why would he?
There
Doesn't make it.
must be a reason.
All right. So
I see what you
Ritsu decides to stop him, and his big resolution is, "I've always been scared of you, and I shouldn't have been. This is part of you. This wasn't a monster inside of you. This was you inside of you, and this you loves me, and I love
I
you.
accept all of you.
I accept all of you." And he gets frozen with like psychic strings, and then we see the 100% meter going up, and it's his 100% meter. He gets 100%, and he's able to actually start attacking the flowers, but then Mob just beats the crap out of him. And gets the
Yeah.
flowers.
His
Then,
100%
like,
isn't
rebuilds
really
them.
much.
Yeah, he rebuilds the flowers, which was hilarious.
So I have a little bit of a disagreement with just his general philosophy there. Like, have you never seen of Mice and Men or read the book or anything? Like, just because somebody is somebody and they're a nice person and they're sweet and everything and they're your brother doesn't mean that if they have way too much power, they aren't going to accidentally hurt you. I mean, it's already happened. So you should be cautious. You should be cautious.
Thematic character resolutions, Jeremy. They don't
Yes.
care about your logic.
Yes, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you've seen what he can do. You should be scared.
Ritsu's defeated. Mob moves on. Regan enters the evacuation zone with Sarazawa helping him push through all the psychic energy. And then Mob starts talking to Shigo, and she goes like, "Hey, when you first Shigo's just an outline, and then pieces of color, literally his body, start flying off of Mob and going onto Shigo, and he's like, when we awaken, you won't exist anymore. I'm taking over." And he starts telling him like, when we were kids, you locked me away, and you shouldn't have done that, man. You should not have stopped using me. He explains that he's the powers, but he's also the emotions, right? And he's like, you shouldn't have locked me down. That was the wrong thing to do, and so now I'm locking you down, and you're not getting back in control of this. And then Regan, who's gone beyond Sarazawa, because Sarazawa couldn't go any further. Regan kept going, and they both, Mom and Shigo, see him, and Shigo's like, "Yeah, there's a guy who lies to us, and he uses us." Meaning subconsciously, Mom has figured this out all along. And she goes like, "Look at him now that he sees us for what we really are. He's going to be done with us." And he turns and walks away, and Regan keeps going. And Regan's like, "I just want to tell you something." And he's getting thrown by the wind. And he takes off his shoes and socks, and he says, "I didn't want to lose to you, so I've been working out too."
This whole action sequence was beautifully animated. I loved the feeling that you get from watching this, and I hate it at the same time because he's a normal human, and the amount of damage he takes would have wrecked anyone else in this story.
He left
like
a crater.
literally killed.
He left
right?
a crater.
He left a
Yeah,
crater in a
a
wall.
normal human leaves a crater in a wall and isn't immediately eviscerated.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So like that didn't make
It's
sense.
such an
But
anime trope, but it's almost always superhumans it happens to. And I saw
Yeah.
that and I was like,
right.
no, you can't.
Oh,
You
he's
can't do
dead.
that with humans.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
So-
That's internal bleeding right there. Liquefied organs.
As Jeremy said, logically this doesn't make sense,
Mm-mm.
but I was overcome with how good it was.
Yeah,
my-
it was beautiful.
My favorite. It doesn't matter if you want to hook me. You just start playing the OP, and they don't just play the OP; they play the original OP.
Yeah.
1 through 99. Here we go. Regan's running. I love the sprinting animation. I love that he changes his whole stance when he sees the building start coming down. So we just see him
That
like
was
start
cool.
doing high knees and really pumping the arms, and then the camera shifts behind him, and we see the building coming down. And realize like I'm gonna get ahead of this. Power slides past it, falls, bonks himself, and then right as the song is like 99, he's reaching out, and we're seeing flashbacks, and he misses the shoulder, and he gets crushed to the ground, grabs Mob's pant leg, and she goes like, I'm not listening to you, and just goes on. And then he passes out, and then right when Shigo has reached the park, Regan gets in front of him, and Shigo goes to use his powers on him, and he grabs his arms, and he looks up, and he's got big red cheeks, and his dimple has returned.
Taking over Reagan's body.
So I mentioned earlier the thematic reason I think is important that Dimple's here is because Dimple's the one who says, I think we should listen to him. We should let Regan say what he has to say to Shigo. And because Mob has confirmed that the only person who's honest with him is Dimple, I think that opens the door for Regan to get in what he has to say. So if Dimple wasn't here, Regan doesn't get to say what he wants. It's that earlier connection with Dimple that pays off here.
That's good. I didn't catch that, but I like that.
That is really good.
Thank you. And thank you to Reddit user that I read that said that.
Well, and in this whole scene, there's no cats.
Probably some flying in that wind.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, Regan. So Regan even asked Dimple to give him a few minutes, and which I don't know why Dimple knows, but Regan tells Mob, "I'm a liar. I've been lying to you. I have no psychic powers, and I've been using you. And this is a part of me that I'm not proud of, and I don't really like this part of me, but it is a part of me. We all have a part of us we don't like, but we need to accept it. And I think you're the kind of person who's strong enough to do that. You can accept that other part of you." He says something like, "If anyone can do it, it's you, Mob," or something about accept. I'm close, right? Jason, you give me
No,
like
no,
I'm crazy.
You're 100% spot on. Something just occurred to me.
Okay.
Throughout this entire speech, Reagan never apologizes.
He doesn't?
No, he never says, "I'm so sorry for using you." He never apologizes for his actions.
So it's an implicit apology then.
Yeah.
No, he's just taking responsibility. He's saying, "I'm an a-hole, but I'm not changing."
No,
You're right.
no.
And
And
he
if you've read the manga, you know he doesn't change.
I just realized this.
awesome.
This is so great. Reagan's the best.
Man, this scene's so good. This is 3 seasons culmination payoff. This relationship has been the center pillar of the entire show. This problem with it has been interwoven in it, and to have it exposed here, to take the time to make that the climax of your story. Regan's crying as he's saying it. His hair's blowing in the wind. It's so good. And then Mob goes to Shigo, and he's like, and she goes like, "You're gonna accept me?" And he's like, "No, I need you to accept me too. We're both Mob." And then they join together, and they become 100% Mob. And oh my god, I love circular thematic storytelling that nails it. It's so good. Man, he must have felt so clever when he's like, when the two halves joined, they're 100%, and that's what 100% meant this whole time. There's no way that's what it meant the whole time, but gosh, that's clever. That's so good.
He was able to use it several times for different things, because I know that we've talked about, not just in season 3. I remember seeing him use it in different ways in season 2 as well. So yeah, he plays with that a lot. But this is definitely like the top of his game.
Right. Just it's just that perfect, like I said, thematic, bringing it all
Mhm.
around, connecting the dots. So yeah, then Mob goes to the park alone. He only has one flower left. And he goes into the park, and then he comes back out. He's still holding the flower, and she rejected him.
And then he cries.
And then he cries. And then
Actually,
Regan,
that's one of the things that Mob and Shigo were like. Shigo brings up, like, what if she rejects you? And Mob's like,
Mhm.
well, then we'll work through it together. And so then she rejects him, and now he has to work through it. And I that was great.
Which
Great.
starts with crying, which he wouldn't have done before.
right. I also like the choice that it wasn't the rejection that started this whole thing, because even Ritsu's like, "Oh, I wonder if he rejected. Now he's gone crazy." And I think that's where a lot of anime would have done, but
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
wasn't it. It
absolutely.
was literally just Mob having to self-actualize
Mhm.
before the confession, so that when he got rejected, he could handle it.
Yeah.
And then Regan walks him home. They talk about how are we going to fix this city. Good thing we know a lot of psychics. And then we could jump to a couple months later, and it's the next school year. Mob's the third year. He's now the vice president of the Body Improvement Club. There's a bunch of new members.
Why isn't Mob in jail?
I know. I think there's a lot of hand wavium when it comes to dealing with the
I mean,
fallout from
he literally
different
just
things.
wrecked
Mhm.
and nearly killed about half the city.
There had to have been some casualties
And
and all that.
there's no accountability for that.
Mhm.
It's just like, oh, he's a kid learning to love himself.
Memory erasing.
Well,
You can never
Yes.
catch me, coppers.
that is such crap.
That is not something the character would do. I know. You're right.
But it's the only real explanation. It's the only thing that could explain why the rest of society doesn't hold him responsible for what he did.
Right, especially if the leader of Claw. Well, most of Claw didn't go to prison. Only the leader of Claw went to prison. But
Yeah.
they do clearly punish espers and are aware that espers can be a
Mhm.
problem.
Or
So
put him
for
on
the
suicide
government
squads.
to just be like, nah, man, it's just puberty, guys. We gotta let this one go.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. That's crazy.
All right, then, and I have it highlighted here. Long before we even discussed it, Mob helps a cat on a pole by climbing the pole. And then
Not
he goes.
using his powers.
Him and Ritsu and Hanazawa go to Regan's office, and then Tomei is there. She now works there. And then there's a bunch of characters. Shows up. Yeah, he's there too. Why not?
Why not?
And then they're there for Regan's birthday as a surprise party. Regan comes in and he starts to cry, holding back his emotion. You shouldn't do that. It creates monsters.
Yeah.
And then Tomei accidentally bumps him and he starts to drop the cake.
Accidentally, no. She smacks him on the back.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but she didn't mean to knock him over.
Yeah, she didn't need to knock him over. Yeah.
She just got
yeah.
a little carried away.
And then he
Yeah.
falls into the cake. And Mob laughs for the first time ever.
Yeah.
That we've seen, yeah.
And not just like, like full on laughing his butt off. And that is the end of the series. He is self-actualized, guys. We did it.
We got here.
And he managed to do it before he got out of school. That's pretty impressive.
Man, he's only in middle school.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to
I
self-actualize.
know, right? Same.
All right, let's go to our final reviews. Jeremy, this is your pick. You can go first.
So yeah, I have a lot of criticisms about just, the cameos, the artificiality of things here and there. Maybe it's just a matter of me not picking up on things that were already there, but some things just seem sloppy. And I think it comes across, at least to me, that it's a sloppiness that it only exists because we are so set on finishing this in exactly 12 episodes right now. It almost feels like an imposed time limit forced it to move at this pace, perhaps, or something like limit of episodes. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just seeing things, but yeah. Whenever it reached its highs, though, it was exactly where I would expect from a Mob Psycho season. So I'm still very happy with it. It was still good, and I'm gonna give it a 4.
All right, Jason, you're up.
Yeah, I have some criticisms as well here and there, specifically surrounding cats. The emotional beats are super good. They don't feel too mushy, and they're very, even though he's in middle school, this speaks to any age. Really appreciate the mental philosophy exercises as well. You know me, I love a slow character burn when it comes to character arcs. And the fact, and Reagan is the best boy, I swear. This, like I said, there's a couple things that I disagree with as far as storytelling, but like this is straight up 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 5 too. Like I said at the beginning, this is the cherry on top of a really perfect dessert, but the cherry was also pretty perfect. So it's not as, it doesn't have the substance as the first two. The OP is almost as good. It'll take time to know for sure if it'll carry on. That's an important part of Mob. But man, they worked hard to get this ending, and so I don't feel it's fair to say because this is just an ending, just an epilogue, that it should have anything taken away from it. I think it's a 5, especially since theme and emotional storylines are near perfect. While the logic might have some flaws, it just doesn't bother me when it's hitting all the right notes at the right time.
Yeah, that's why it's so good that we have such a broad range here of like logic over emotion, and then emotion over logic, and then a nice middle ground.
That's right.
And then Jason is also here.
Yeah.
I see how it is. Look, I wasn't here for the first one. I'm sorry.
You watched the first one though, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I watch every anime we do. It's just if I miss a week, then I don't get to talk about it.
It was 6 years ago. I couldn't remember. Like if I don't remember if it was like pre-planned, we wouldn't be able to be there, or if it was a last minute thing. Who remembers 6 years ago? But okay, just wanted to make sure. All right. Our next anime is Summertime Rendering. And if you have thoughts on Mob Psycho 100, 3, or 2, or 1, or anything we've talked about recently, you can reach us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast. You can come to our website and there's a contact us button, theanimebakaclub.com. Love to have you visit that. We pay money for that. So when you come there, it makes us happy. We don't get any money from it, but
it's nice to see the views go up.
It's nice to see the views go. Or you can leave a comment where you found this, like YouTube. We've been getting a lot of YouTube comments, so those are great. I also suggest you read other people's YouTube comments. They're not there just for us. It's supposed to be like, hey, let's keep this party going. Let's keep mobbing, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't talk bad about Gintama. Found that out.
Never.
I wouldn't even say we talked bad about it. I felt like we talked mildly about it. No, the comments actually have been great lately, so thank you all for those. And with that, it's time for us to say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Fight on! Fight on! Fight on!
Read manga like I do. Sayonara.
I love it.